Hello, welcome to the Sit Down with Yesenia. Today we have the legendary actor, Mark Margolis. Take me back to the beginning when did you decide you wanted to be an actor?
When I was about 14. I used to do a lot of writing, and a buddy of mine and I were sitting on his steps in Northeast Philly, though I grew up mostly in West Philly. We were talking about radio announcing. We were hung up on radio. And then he said something about, why don't we try acting? And I thought that was a great idea. And I immediately started thinking about it a lot, and I really wanted to do that, though it was something that scared me. And I also thought that I wasn't really somebody that could get anywhere in that world. In fact, later in high school, there was a guy I remember, Irving Madnick, who said, Margolis wants to be an actor. Who the hell does he think he is, Clark Gable? So, my father was a factory worker, but overqualified, very supportive of me. My brother was a pianist and a composer. They were very into the arts. We listened to classical music all day. But my father actually, he said, well, if you want to try it, there's an acting school in downtown Philly. So at 14 years old, I signed up for the Bessie V. Hicks School of Dramatic Arts.
Oh, that's great.
I later found out that Bessie V. Hicks was some kind of an early silent film star or something like that. I didn't know who she was. They had a big picture of Charles Bronson above the front desk. I think he was their only claim to fame.
So you studied there too?
I went there apparently, because he grew up in Pennsylvania.
So how did you make it to New York from there?
I went to Temple University after high school. I had come to New York once, and I thought it was fabulous with some buddies when I was 16. And we drove to New York and went to a lot of acting schools to see what there was there. And
you landed on Stella Adler.
Well,
right?
Stella Adler interviewed us and blew us away. I mean, my first thought was, if God is a woman, this is God. And this was in the summer that we came to see her, and we signed up to start classes that September.
So from the Stella Adler School, like when was your first paying job after you actually?
Actually, while I was at Stella's, I wrote a little play about a Puerto Rican kid. I used to like doing characters. I heard this kid on a radio who was very intimidated, very tentative in everything he said. And I was taken by his way of talking, and I listened to what he had to say about this thing that happened in school, and I wrote a little one-act play about it for myself, just being interviewed by somebody as he was on the radio. And Stella Adler went crazy about it, and everybody else thought it was terrific. And I ended up in a thing called Talent 61, which was a Broadway showcase at the Music Box Theater. From there, I got a guy who became a major manager, took me on, loved this thing, got me a bigger manager that he was connected to, connected me with somebody that wanted me to turn the whole thing into a full-length script for a movie. I don't want to go into all of that. Okay. But at the same time, this manager he hooked me up with sent me out for an audition for a Broadway play. This was about a year after I got out of Stella's.
So tell me about the scene in the West Village at the time.
It was a much richer, warmer, wonderful, and this is before all the peace, love, flower shit. When it was just like you went in a coffee house and sat there all night and drank cappuccino and wrote poetry. I was the manager of a coffee house on McDougal Street. I used to let Richie Havens sit there all night because I loved listening to his music, even though he didn't have any money. At that time was the beginning of Bob Dylan playing across the street at it was the Gaslight and places like that. But anyhow, the 60s, I got a little bit lost in the wildness of the 60s as it went on. And I drifted away from acting on some levels. It just seemed like so much nonsense at that time. It was like everything was a big revolution. But because of my influence in the influence that the gallery world had on me. These people used to do things called happenings, whole installations where things went on,
Right.
rather than just a... I began to create these giant plastic structures, transparent structures, and spray images on them using
So you're a sculptor
silhouettes.
too.
Yeah, but these things, they were 4 by 8 feet. They moved on wheels. They were transparent. There were dozens and dozens of them. They filled an entire, they would fill a university gymnasium. When I started building them in a studio, and then I got actors to do movement things inside of them, and I created tapes to talk while they did these things. We did a couple performances in New York, got great reviews, sent out the reviews to colleges all over the country, and by the end of the 60s, I was touring colleges all over the country with this theater company called Blue Dome, based on Buckminster Fuller's geodesic domes. I had a couple architects that worked with me, and we had a couple grants from the New York State Council on the Arts.
Yeah.
And we toured colleges all over New England, down south. Then we went on a tour of the whole United States down to New Mexico, which is the first time I ever got to New Mexico. The University of New Mexico hired us twice.
You've been to New Mexico recently,
Many times,
right?
yes.
For filming?
Yes, for a TV
Some
show
secret
that I'm
projects?
not allowed to
I was going to say,
what
any
it
secret
is.
projects that you want to
I'm not
give
allowed
us?
to say what it is. I get in a lot of trouble.
Okay.
I love working out there. And Albuquerque's a big sprawling city. It used to be charming in the 1970s. Now it's just too big. There are parts of it you could be in Indiana, you wouldn't even know you were in New Mexico. A lot of the adobe's gone.
Yeah.
The mountains are still gorgeous there. But the minute you get north of Albuquerque, or even in any other direction, start going up towards Santa Fe, it gets gorgeous.
Yeah, I hear that
and
a
it's
lot.
also got the Native American vibe. There's dozens and dozens of Native American pueblos, and you also have the vibe of these 500-year-old Latino families, Spanish families that have been there. They're like the descendants of the conquistadors.
Any fun memories on the set of Scarface that you want to share?
They had a rehearsal in, I think, November of '82, where they brought everybody out to LA for a week, and we were in one room. It was the only time I was ever around Michelle Pfeiffer. I had no scenes with her.
Did you ever imagine the iconic film it would become?
No, no one did. In fact, when the film opened, it bombed. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, I remember.
The critics said it was a piece of garbage. It was ahead of its time in some ways. If it had come out in '87, maybe it would have done, but it picked up a big following in the later '80s on video, when people started watching it on video. And then the whole hip-hop crowd got into it big time.
Oh my goodness, yes.
They can't get enough of it, and that really made it the biggest thing in the world.
One of the,
yes.
I think that's a good segue, because I know that you took on the role of what this generation knows you as, Theo Salamanca, in Breaking Bad, and the Emmy nomination with the non-speaking role.
Yes.
And somebody maybe of your stature wouldn't have taken it on, but what did you see specifically?
What stature? I have a low opinion of myself.
I don't. So.
I thought it was a terrific part. A guy who, first of all, you had in the opening thing, in that shed, in the opening scene, you had a guy who was sitting in front of a novella on television. Isn't that what?
Yes, telenovelas.
What you Irish people call a soap opera, a novella.
We watched them growing up.
So he was like catatonically posed in front of that. Two guys that are being held hostage by my nephew Tuco.
Right.
They're under the impression that I'm brain dead, but my brain works very well. I understand everything they're doing. That was fascinating.
Yeah.
All that, and the way it goes, where I observe them trying to poison him, and then try to communicate that to my nephew without using words. How can you pass on that? Who gives a shit whether it has words or not?
Yeah, no, it's a
I mean, in life, I don't, words, even Lee Strasberg used to say, the words are your enemies. Because a lot of people are like learning every word. They have to know their lines.
Right.
I mean, you do have to know your lines. Sometimes the writing's brilliant and it's important. I've been in plays where the writing was awesome. Big ideas. I did one with Tony Kushner, the guy who wrote Angels in America a couple years ago in Berkeley. And it was the best thing ever. But that's besides the point. But in life, all kinds of things happen without words. We try to accomplish something. I mean, that's what they say, acting is action.
Right.
We use an action to get what we want, but you don't always have to use words.
Tell me a little bit about being a downtown person in New York.
I've always liked downtown.
Is it because
I loved the Greenwich Village when I first came to New York. I didn't want to live anywhere else. I told you I moved in with this guy on 9th Street.
Right.
And then when I got married, we got a place on 6th Avenue and 3rd Street. Then we later moved to Cornelia Street. We lived on Jane Street in the far West Village.
Yeah. What are some of your favorite New York restaurants?
Currently, in the past, when I don't know, there's a restaurant up the street that's wonderful at Franklin and Harrison called Terra. Have you been in there?
Yes, I have. It's really
got
great.
these little dishes for $12.
Yeah.
And it looks cheap, and no matter how.
And they have that outdoor seating now that is
Yes,
so
and they
nice.
have like, you get 2 lamb chops and a potato for $12. My favorite burger place, which goes back 40 years, is Ken's Broom Street Bar at West Broadway in Broome.
Yes.
And that's very inexpensive. It's used to be $8, it's about 11. I like Gigino's down the street.
I was going to say,
the
you filmed Dinner Rush at Gigino's where you played the
I love that.
art gallery.
He shot that film
So
in
when you
2
go there,
weeks.
do you eat for free?
I went there and they gave me a complete dinner free.
Oh.
The second week, that time I went back there, they gave me a really wonderful bottle of wine free. The third time they gave me dessert free. And then the fourth time I paid for the whole thing and I saw Bob Giraldi. I said, I guess it's over. He said, what do you want me to do? Feed you forever? He's a tough guy.
Anyways, Mark, thank you so much for taking the time to do this.